I won't run from the crushing. I'll hold on through the pain. What I lose means nothing next to what I gain. Come tear down every idol, so this heart won't stray. Don't let me stray. I just wanna be your sanctuary, a dwelling place for grace and mercy. Keep sifting me till.
And Boker Tov, everybody. Welcome once again to the Threshing Floor here on lamnetwork.tv, where we discuss the issues of modern day faith, and we want to put everything on the threshing floor. We want to know the difference between the wheat and the chaff, and we want God to sort through what is of him and what is not, because I'll tell you something, there's a lot of craziness going on out there right now, but here on the threshing floor and here on Lamb Network, we have the privilege of being able to share with you one broadcast at a time what is truly lining up with Scripture and what is off and a matter of one's own opinion. And periodically, I have a chance to interview some fascinating guests, and the one that we have today is no stranger to a lot of you. He has developed quite a reputation here in Canada and around the world, actually. And it's all of the Lord, and his next assignment is one that really gets my juices flowing, because this is, I don't know if there are words to describe how important what he is about to do. So without further ado, I'm going to bring him in and let him talk about it himself. And I would like to welcome back to the broadcast Mike Van Zanten, also known as Mike the Spike. Good morning, Mr. Van Zanten.
Good morning. How are you doing this evening or this morning? Yeah, bright and early this morning. Yes.
Yeah, it all kind of blends in together, doesn't it?
Yes,
after a while?
It does. It does for sure. It's good.
Yes, it's great to have you back. For those who remember, we had you on a couple of months ago talking about a powerful, powerful testimony, but also this really weird ministry that God has got you doing. But at the same time, it makes so much sense. And so we talked about you going across Canada and putting spikes into the ground, representing the nails that went into Yeshua's arms and legs. And it's all about reclaiming the land.
Yes.
And here, you know, at least in this household and on various avenues and you know, different times that we pray specifically that God would take the land back. You know, he said to Abraham, he says, wherever you step, that land will, wherever your foot goes, that land will be for you. It'll
Right.
be your possession.
Right.
Well, we are Abraham's descendants, but so is Yeshua.
Yes.
And so when we go and we claim land back, it's for the purpose of the kingdom.
Right. And of course, in that, and you're so right. Yes, but it's when we go in with intention, right?
Yeah.
When we go to reclaim the land. It's not just anywhere we go on holidays. We
No.
right. And that's the point, right? It's literally as he said to Abraham, and as Abraham went, it's you're going with intention.
Yes.
Of cleansing the land and reclaiming the land and coming against the forces that have taken land and peoples hostage in that sense for darkness and to reclaim those places for the light.
So when the last time you were with us, you talked about how you've been to every province, and you've also been to all the territories, you've been to the border, but then God sent you over to Israel, and you actually had a chance to go, what was the very top of Mount Hermon, right?
Yes. Yeah. The very top. Yes.
Man, oh man. Oh, I wish I'd been there with you on that one.
Yeah, that was really, to me, everything has been a stepping toward more. And, the Lord's just been teaching me. And from day one, when he said, drive to Ottawa and put a spike in the ground behind the Parliament buildings. And as that started back in February of 2022, everything has just been a step into the more of reclaiming authority and land. And so as we walk with the Lord into things, it does, we move into the next things. Now I'm trying to see, did I just freeze?
No, you're okay.
Good. Because I see it on my here. So that's all good. So anyway, so it really is. And so with the Mount Hermon, especially, it's, I really clearly heard the Lord say, I need you to go to the top of Mount Hermon and to deal with the Nephilim agenda. And, I didn't even really know 100% what that meant as we did the research and the study. And of course, whenever you have an assignment, you now have to do the hard work of the prayer strategy of understanding what has gone on. And that certainly has been was a major part. And so realizing, of course, that it was there, we see in Genesis 6 and talking about the fallen ones who came down and took human form, that happened on Mount Hermon. And we see that more clearly in the book of Enoch 6, of course, which I think there's some great reference to that there as well. But then understanding, and so standing there as we did, there was 25 of us that were on the top of Mount Hermon to the very top. And as we, again, went through about a 24-page prayer strategy, breaking curses, doing all of that, getting to the top, taking communion, breaking the body over the land, pouring the blood of Yeshua over the land, and then driving a spike and breaking the curses from that place. And as I tell you, I've had the privilege, the Lord's called me to drive spikes in many places around the world now. But when I was putting that spike in the ground, the earth shook. I mean, I've never had such an experience. I struck it. Normally I might strike a spike if I'm not pressing it straight in. If I use the mallet I have, I might do that 3 or 4 times. This was 17 times of full force. And of course, 17 being the number of victory. I wasn't even counting, to be honest. I was just being led. And I could feel the earth shaking as we did that assignment at Mount Hermon. It was quite extraordinary.
Yeah, wow.
That night, within hours, actually, there was a bunch of the rebels, terrorists, who were actually moving a bunch of weapons from Syria into Lebanon, right under where we were, but across Mount Hermon. Late, it was like 2 or 3 in the morning, and the IDF saw them, ended up getting them, got every person, everything that was done. And it was just a confirmation that what the enemy is trying to do in secret, that God and his people will begin to reclaim. And that was within hours of what we did. And it was just such a confirmation of, just an immediate response to the darkness that had flowed from that place. And of course, Mount Hermon, below Mount Hermon is Caesarea Philippi. So from the top of Mount Hermon, you have Caesarea Philippi down where, of course, you have the gate of Hades, and where Yeshua, with his disciples declared about the ecclesia and all of that. And so, it's quite something.
Yeah. And he asked right there in front of Pan's Grotto. Yes. And they still don't know how far that thing goes down.
Right. Yeah. And the amount of sacrifices that happened there. And it's a portal of death, Hades being death, and all that has taken place. So yes, lots has happened.
Yeah. And I've actually been there. It's
yes, I have too.
Quite amazing, actually. And but he says, who do you think I am? And Peter said, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And he said, flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father in heaven.
Yes.
And he says that upon this rock, and he's talking about Mount Hermon. He's not talking about Peter.
No,
Peter,
no.
Peter was a Petros. He was a little stone.
Yes.
This was a Petra, and it was a huge rock.
Yes.
But so he's talking about Mount Hermon behind him. He says, upon this rock, I will build my ecclesia. I will build my assembly.
Right.
And the gates of hell that we're standing in front of will not prevail against it. It's
right.
just fantastic.
Yeah. It's a declaration of himself, who was
Yeah.
just declared, and of course, Mount Hermon. And of course, he then goes up to the top of Mount Hermon to be transfigured. I do not believe it was Mount Tabor, as many will say. It was on Mount Hermon that the statement, and it's just amazing, right? If you think of declaring who you're at war with right in the midst of the enemy camp. I mean, I just love how Yeshua does that. He goes into the deepest, darkest enemy camp and has a declaration of who he is and what he was coming to accomplish. And then he goes to the top of Mount Hermon and is transfigured. It's an extraordinary thing. And so standing there right where that event would have happened and doing the declarations we were doing was extraordinary.
And then you had a chance to put a spike in at the eastern gate where Yeshua is going to actually come through.
Yes.
When he returns.
Yes.
That was a little dicey there.
Yes. Yes. 4 soldiers came running at me with their machine guns pointed. Because what I did is I went up to that corner of that eastern gate and I started taking stuff out of my backpack because I'm building an altar and I've got a spike and I've got oil and salt and I've got the wine, the body and blood of Yeshua, and so much. I'm pulling this stuff and I'm planting it in the corner, and I realize I'm on video. So they would have been radioed to say somebody has planted a bomb, or something. And so they came, and it was obvious to me that 3 of them were prepared to shoot me on the spot. Thankfully one was less driven that way. But yes, it was a very interesting moment. And that was part of 12 assignments. That was one of the 12 assignments on that trip, separate trip, where all over Jerusalem and Israel and then to Lebanon, where 12 spikes and altars were built on that trip. Yeah.
Right. So you have a pretty interesting one coming up.
Right.
When did you get the notification for this?
Right. So I usually get sort of an awareness of upcoming things. Sometimes I would suggest that was almost a year ago when I first had a sense that I would be going to at least to Washington, D.C., to the City of London, to Rome and the Vatican as part of understanding, some of the things that are happening on the earth. But then while we were there in Israel, as part of that 10 days of when we were on the top of Mount Hermon, it was a very clear call to go to Jekyll Island and Washington, D.C. soon. And so that's now being in the planning stages of preparing. And so, so this next assignment, which got confirmed by the words there in Israel, as I came home, began to do the research with others, Miriam Wakefield and her husband, Don Dixon, and others are very much a part of all this. I'm certainly not a solo act. My whole ecclesia, so I have an ecclesia gathering every Saturday morning in my home, and the whole ecclesia gathering is a part of these assignments. And so I always go with a great covering, and 4 others will be joining me from my ecclesia on these next assignments as well.
So talk to us a bit, for those who don't know, what is Jekyll Island?
Right.
Where is it, and why is it so important in this whole agenda?
Yes. So Jekyll Island is on the very east coast. It's part of Georgia, and it's an island just off the coast of Georgia, which is just above Florida. So to actually go there, we're flying into Jacksonville, Florida, and it's about an hour and 10-minute drive from the airport in Jacksonville to Jekyll Island. So why is Jekyll Island so important? Well, and for some, I'll just mention Dr. Laura Sanger is a great resource on some of this. I was following some of her stuff on the Nephilim. She actually wrote a book on the Federal Reserve. And so we've been through that book, and so very helpful. So I began to realize, of course, Jekyll Island is where 7 men gathered who probably had under part of their control about a third of the wealth of the planet at that time. I mean, we're talking, they represented the wealthiest people on the planet. 7 men had a private meeting on Jekyll Island between November 20th, November 30th of 1910. And they went there to develop the Federal Reserve. So why Jekyll Island? Why would they go there? Well, it actually turns out that Jekyll Island has quite the long history, and that they have found many bones, many remains of a tribe that was there. And they have proof that these people, many of them were between 7.5 to 9 feet tall on that island. And if you know anything about the Nephilim, you realize these are giants, and that there were Nephilim on Jekyll Island. I'm convinced of it, and certainly many others as well. And so the Nephilim, of course, from this whole line of the fallen angels who took human form, and again, it's about tainting the blood and all of that, and the evil, the darkness, the kingdom of darkness. And so they gathered in that place. Why? Because these Nephilim who were there, these tribes that were there, part of the Nephilim, they murdered, sacrificed many, at least thousands of people, especially children, babies, there on Jekyll Island. So we understand that the shedding of innocent blood impacts the earth. We see this one of the first times clearly in Genesis 4, when Yahweh, says that the earth cries out with the shedding of the blood of your brother. And so there's the shedding of that innocent blood taints the land, but also gives access to greater demonic power as a result of those things. It's like it creates portals to the underworld that give more power and strength to the demonic plans of those who are gathering. So these men gathered on Jekyll Island, and they actually gathered right in a place where they believe, and I believe that they know where the altar of sacrifice was. They gathered for 10 days to develop the Federal Reserve there in that place. And of course, the Federal Reserve is not a federal agency. It's a privately owned corporation that, again, if you get any dollar bill from the United States, it'll say the Federal Reserve. And so they not only control the American monetary system, they control monetary systems around the world. And they really want a debt-based control of all of humanity. Sorry.
So the Rothschilds are really the owners, and a couple of other bloodline families.
Yes.
The Rothschilds are the primary ones because they were the courtiers to the Vatican. Of course, they held the Vatican finances. But they have created this network of central banks, which produce fiat currency and also fractional reserve banking, and they combine the two together to enslave nations.
Yes.
And so the Bank of International Settlements, which is based in, is it Bern, Switzerland? It's somewhere in Switzerland. I know that.
Yes, and also ties, of course, strongly to the City of London, right? Where a lot of this comes out of. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And,
Yes.
we need to do a whole show just on the City of London alone.
Yes. Yes.
But we can certainly get into that. But so what the Bank of International Settlements is, it is the central bank for the central banks.
Right.
And it lends out the money to the central banks, and then the central banks of each country, Bank of Canada, the Federal Reserve in the United States, everywhere else. And, if you know your history properly, you'll know that if a country does not submit to this whole system to install a central bank, like Iraq under Saddam Hussein,
that's what Libya, the war was all about. All these wars, all the wars around
Libya,
the world
under Muammar Gaddafi. Not that these guys weren't bad guys, not that they weren't head cases or anything like that and responsible for terrorism, but the reason they got overthrown is because they refused to put in a central bank, and that is a big part of what's going on in Iran right now.
Yes.
Despite that, yes, we understand that the Islamic regime is an evil regime. It's where nobody's crying that Khamenei was killed on February 28th. He had to go. He's another Haman and everything else. But a big issue over there is the fact that Iran, North Korea, they don't want central banks.
Right.
And so, the same thing with Syria. That is why Obama and Clinton created ISIS.
Right.
It all goes back to the money. So the Federal Reserve was the third central bank in the United States. And if you want a fascinating history, read Andrew Jackson's presidency and how he went to war against the central bank and actually neutralized it.
Right.
There was a central bank, and he refused to renew the charter because he knew how destructive all this was, this whole fiat money system and everything else. And giving a nation's currency into the hand of private people never works out well for the citizenry.
Right. And they'll do anything. I mean, we can, you talk about the sinking of the Titanic, and I did call it the sinking of the Titanic. You can talk about the towers, anyway, all of this is tied to things around the Federal Reserve.
Yeah. Nobody, very few people know that J.P. Rockefeller.
Morgan. J.P. Morgan.
J.P. Morgan, sorry.
Yes.
He was supposed to be on the Titanic.
Yeah.
And
he actually had a full suite. I mean, he was the part of the funding and all of that. And then 4 hours before, he said, "Oh, you know what? I can't make it on this." And so he canceled his ticket
and took all of his art off.
Yeah.
He had a whole bunch of artwork that was supposed to be on, and he took all that off.
It was removed before they sailed, before the sinking, because the main objectors, these wealthy, 3 or 4 of the wealthiest men who are objecting to implementing the Federal Reserve, were on the sailing of the Titanic.
Yeah, John Jacob Astor,
yes.
And there was
yes. And so that's anyway. Once you really get into understanding this, you understand the degree of evil, and they do not care at all about humanity. No. That 2,000 other people may die because they have to take care of a few people is irrelevant to them. And because what they refer, this is going to sound fairly harsh, they refer to us as useless eaters, those who aren't part of it. And sorry?
It's well known.
Yes, yeah, that's right. And so, anyway, so that is part of this call, this assignment. So the current assignment is to go to Jekyll Island and to go there and deal with the root system, right? So to deal with the root of where the Federal Reserve was established, and to go there. And of course, the most powerful elements in the universe are the body and blood of Yeshua. Right. And these are the elements. I don't do any assignment. I don't necessarily put a spike in every assignment, but what I 100% of the time do in every assignment is I always carry the communion elements, the body and blood of Yeshua, and I'm always using that as dealing with the evil root systems of the shedding of innocent blood. So you need, obviously, Yeshua's blood was shed to deal with all the blood covenants and to deal with that. And so that's part of it. So we're going to Jekyll Island. There's an 18-page prayer strategy that's going to be dealing with all this. We actually have somebody who lives on Jekyll Island. We're staying at this person's house. So we have people who have ownership of land. I have somebody else from Georgia. We're always making sure that we're working with those who have rights to the land as well. So you have somebody who's got the rights to the land that gives you access, greater access to do the things that you need to do on the land, and then to deal with the root system of evil that was established there back again in November 20th or 30th of 1910, before the establishment of the Federal Reserve, I believe late 1913, that again is controlling much of what happens on the planet. And so really, and I believe we're in a time. So if you just look at this, and I can't give dates of where we're going to be doing this, it's sooner than later, but just look at what's all happening in the month of May. I mean, it's just like the Lord is doing so many things. You talk about the rededication of the United States to the Lord, right? And rededication on May 17th. Also, they're actually right now, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, is actually not being reaffirmed. And so his last day is May 15th of this month. And that Kevin Warsh, it looks like he has already passed through the committee, needs to be passed through the Senate, and he will be taking that position of the new chairman of the Federal Reserve. And it's President Trump who has put his name forward back in January. And just look at the timing of this. I had no idea of when we picked our dates compared to these types of events. And of course, we have Shavuot, the outpouring of the Holy Spirit, starting the evening of Thursday, May 21st. And I have a big event planned for that. I believe there's going to be an outpouring of power in this Shavuot that I believe people need to be connected to, with an expectancy of the more of the upon in power. And that's part of our preparation, all these steps to be able to go with greater power than we've ever carried, to go and deal with the root systems of evil upon this planet. Yeah,
that is quite amazing. And so how long do you expect to be in Jekyll Island?
So we are only going to be there one night, a full day. And so we get there in the evening and then leave the next evening. And so Jekyll Island is not all that big. We have part of it, we're going to have this 6-person golf cart where we're going to be able to drive around all the locations through the person who has a home there. And yes, that assignment. So when we do the assignments, everything we do from the time we arrive to the time we leave is focused on dealing with the root systems of evil upon that place. And so we do it step by step on this whole prayer agenda, and specific prayers that the owner of the land will be speaking and declaring. And all of it is making declarations, confession, repentance, declarations of dealing with the root system, and of course, the body and blood of Yeshua. And yes, I will be driving a spike onto that land. I have 4 spikes that have just been sent to me, just received them a couple days ago. Jekyll Island, Washington, D.C., City of London, and Rome, Vatican, that we will be dealing with in the upcoming months.
So you're now on the same trip, you're going to Washington after that, correct?
Yes. So we're going from Jekyll Island, dealing with that root system there, and then going to Washington, D.C. And of course, you know, Washington, D.C., so much of it established by the Masons, and dealing with that whole root system, dealing with the altars there that have been set up and established. And so, that we're there for a couple days to deal with all the different things. That's again, certainly tide comes out of the Jekyll Island to go there to deal with the establishment of the things of Washington, D.C. And we know there's some great things that President Trump is doing, even as he dug up a bunch of the, under the White House and all of that to set up this new hall. And I think that there are great steps, again, rededicating the United States to the Lord, this assembly gathering right on the mall there in Washington, D.C., just prior to us getting there. And I think all of these things are in preparation for some of the things that we'll be doing there.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those who are, regular followers of my ministry, when I went through the book of Revelation and I was dealing with Mystery Babylon in chapter 17, I spent a couple of weeks talking about the Masonic Foundation of Washington, D.C.
Right.
And talked about even the layout of the entire city, how it's all geometric shapes, and there's a pentagram there. You've got, 13 streets between, the the different buildings. You've got the Washington Monument that is 555 feet tall, right. Which is an obelisk, obviously.
Yes.
And
obelisk and altar of evil. Yes. Yeah. Now we're going to spend quite a bit of time there, actually.
Yeah. So, I mean, you could spend weeks driving spikes into Washington. It's what was it? Bill Schneblin, he used a great word I hadn't heard in a long time. He says it's festooned with with altar. I mean, even if you look at all the buildings within Washington, D.C., there are, there are gargoyles. There are the little hats, the French hats that were part of the Revolution. They've got those in place. I mean, stuff that you don't even think about.
Right.
And it's all inviting those evil spirits and that evil demonic power.
Yep.
And if God is going to take the United States back, and we don't know if he is or not, there's no prophecy in scripture that talks about the United States being there in the last days. But if it is going to be a sheep nation, then he has to purge that nation of its iniquity and the evil foundation that it's based on. And although the United States was founded on Christian principles because of the Pilgrims, by the time you get to the founding fathers, most of them were not Christians. Jefferson, he was very hostile to Christianity, as a matter of fact. Washington, obviously, the only time he ever speaks about Christianity was he talks about the religion of Jesus. That was the only quote that he's ever made about that. Ben Franklin, he was part of the Hellfire Club, which you don't want to know what went on there. I mean, it's dark.
Yes. Well, and again, there's no question to the darkness. And again, the Epstein files is just a skimming of the degree of evil, obviously, that has happened, has taken place, and the lineage of all of that. At the same time, I do personally, have a sense that they are not only playing a significant role, I believe, in events around the world that I think will begin. I believe we're going to begin to see a real shift in the tide of events.
Well, it has to, because it's gotten to the point where they're rushing this AI surveillance system in. And that's really Trump's main job. All the other things that he is doing, some of them good, whatever the case may be, but bringing in guys like Sam Altman, who's a reprobate, Peter Thiel, who's a reprobate. I mean, these guys are open homosexuals. They are participating in every kind of debauchery and everything else. And what was it? Peter Thiel actually had some meetings last year where he was doing conferences on the Antichrist and teaching on who it would be and stuff. I mean, it's bizarro. And if you go back to Revelation 17, and it talks about the 10 kings who don't have a kingdom, well, you look at these tech oligarchs, and what are they called? They're called tech titans. And there's another word, all tying back to the Nephilim with these guys. And who are the richest men in the world? Elon Musk. He's worth upwards of like $500 billion now, and they're talking about a pay package for him of over $1 trillion. So what are they going to do? They're going to take their wealth, and wasn't it King Charles who said this at the CP26 event a few years ago, where it said that, and he wasn't referring to who it was, but you remember this quote where he said he needs more than basically the wealth of the nations.
Right.
So,
It's funny, even when you talk about the wealth of Elon Musk, when you talk about those who have the Federal Reserve, I mean, we don't even have numbers that can describe their wealth, right? No. I mean, Elon Musk, yes, who's created his wealth in a whole bunch of ways, but these that control and own the Federal Reserve, you got to add a whole bunch of zeros onto Elon Musk's wealth to get anywhere close, because they control every time anybody prints money, you have to borrow that from them as part of this whole system. And so these are the main obvious leaders of all of these, and everybody else are just playing their roles under that.
Yeah, including most of the politicians. I mean, if you look at the buffoons that are running the world right now in Europe and down in Australasia and just about everywhere in the world, it's a gong show. It's like these guys aren't.
We don't have to look past Canada.
Yeah.
To get an understanding. I mean, when you just look at the made stuff in Canada. Look at the abortion made stuff. I mean, the evil and the degree of the spirit of death and evil as a result of what is happening at the highest levels in this country right now. I tell you, every day we need to be coming into this place of repentance and declarations against this evil and what is happening. And so, yes, it's just a snapshot of what you're describing around the world.
Well,
but Canada
and,
certainly strong in this.
You were referencing talking about the blood covering the land, and there's a passage in Numbers chapter 35, and I'm just going to pull it up here on the screen. And it says in verse 30, if anyone kills a person, the murderer shall be put to death at the evidence of witness, but no person shall be put to death on the testimony of one witness. Moreover, you shall not take a ransom for the life of the murderer who is guilty of death, but you shall surely put him to death. You shall not take ransom for him who has fled to a city of refuge, that he may return to live in the land before the death of the priest. So you shall not pollute the land in which you are, for blood pollutes the land. And here's the key: no expiation can be made for the land for the blood that is shed on it, except by the blood of him who shed it.
Yes.
You shall not defile the land in which you live, in the midst of which I dwell, for the Lord, I, Lord, am dwelling in the midst of the sons of Israel.
Yes.
So, how much of that is applicable after the cross today?
Right. I mean, again, you have the one who created, all things, who spoke the universe, who spoke the world into existence. And I believe it was Yeshua in Genesis 2 who breathed life, which is both breath, oxygen, and the spirit life into Adam. And again, we see that in, resurrection evening, when he breathes over his disciples and said, receive the Holy Spirit. That's the same breath from Genesis 2 that Yeshua breathes the spirit of life over the disciples on resurrection evening and saying, receive the Holy Spirit. And so, yes, the spirit of life. So the one who created all life, all things, who has ownership, shed his blood. I mean, just the amount, when I think about the amount of blood that was shed by Yeshua, first on the Mount of Olives by the drops of blood, and then he just continually bled from the beatings as they took him and everything else, of course, then to the final of the spikes driven through and everything else. He poured his blood upon the earth and then gave us the elements and declared them his body, his blood, which gives us, as those adopted into the family of the kingdom, the right to now use his elements to reclaim land and to cancel the curses of the shedding of innocent blood.
Yeah. It's so we are living in interesting times, and so this assignment that you've got, because when you think just the scope of what these guys have done with the financial system, and I've spoken about this in the past. There is an amazing book. I'm going to see if I can grab it here. I just redid my library. Oh, there it is. So this book here, Insidious, written by Orrin Woodward, who's the founder of the Life Leadership Company. He wrote this book 2 years ago regarding the history of our financial system. And if you want an understanding of how we got to where we are, this book is the best one that's ever been written, I think, on putting the whole picture together. And you'll even understand a whole lot better about world wars and stuff like that.
Right. Oh yeah, 100%.
And if anybody wants a copy, contact the ministry. I'd love to get you one. I've read that book through twice, and I understand a lot about what has gone on. I read that book and my brain got stretched. It was like, oh my gosh. I mean, it is so complex.
Yes.
And what they've done. And yet, when it comes to what money was supposed to be, it was supposed to be very simple.
Yes.
And yet now we've got all kinds of crazy things and instruments and it gets further and further away from reality. Whereas money was always supposed to be just a medium of exchange.
That was covered by gold, precious metals. That
Yes.
It was, rather than everybody carrying gold around, we had a paper representation of the value of that gold. And of course, soon as you get rid of gold backed or precious metal backed currencies, you have fiat currency, which has zero value. Besides what it's connected to the Federal Reserve and those who control that, and of course loses. And so, to me, one of the major factors, I believe we're going to see this in the time ahead, is seeing gold-backed currency begin to be reestablished, which begins to rattle and have an impact. And that's, as part of what I'm doing in the midst of this is one of the things that I think could bring a major shift. Of course, that's what Russia did, right? They started to reestablish their currency on a gold back, and they were also selling and buying oil, selling oil without the American currency, which is a no-no by the Federal Reserve. And of course, that's why all the world is coming against Russia, and I would suggest again why this war continues to go.
Yeah,
it's because they're basically declaring they do not want to be part of this system any longer, and that the gold-backed currency and not using the American dollar for their oil that they're selling. Again, they are really sticking their nose up to the Federal Reserve. And if you do that, you're going to war, and they will bring everything against you.
Yeah.
And so there's, again, current events, absolutely very relevant in the midst of these things.
Yeah. And it was, I'm pretty sure it was J.D. Rockefeller when he was asked, could have been J.P. Morgan. Now I'm starting to mix the two of them up. But it was asked, I think it was Rockefeller who was asked, how much is enough? when it came to money, because at one time Rockefeller was the richest man in the world,
Sure.
and his response was a little bit more.
Right.
And
Yes.
and it goes
There's
back
never
to
enough.
and I actually did a message on that a couple weeks ago where I was talking about the song from The Greatest Showman on Earth. It's
Right.
never enough.
Right.
And that really describes the black hole within people's souls.
Right.
That if you're trying to fill that void with money, sex, power, whatever it is that you're chasing, it's been described quite often as a God-sized hole, and only God can fill that.
Right.
And so when Paul says we need to learn to be content with whatever he says, I've learned to be abased and abound. I've learned to live with much and with little.
Right.
And whatever it is that God has got me is sufficient. But if you don't have God in there to satisfy that, if Yeshua isn't the fulfillment of all your desires, then you're going to be chasing after windmills. And
Yes.
money is simply a windmill. You can have all this money and still be miserable.
Sure. Well, again, I played that game. I when I
it's part of
was
your testimony.
in my mid 20s, right? And good family business, brand new, 4,000 square foot house in my mid 20s, and married, and everybody who looked at my life, we were traveling around the world at that point, and yet I was just bitterly angry because I felt like I was lied to, because I believed that you who have the most toys when you die wins, and actually it's absolutely just bitterness, because you realize how broken, and you can't consume enough to fill it, because it pours out faster than you can pour it in. And so all of these things. So as I escalated my consumption rate of everything evil in that time in my mid to late 20s, that led me to the verge of suicide that I planned for 2 weeks. And it was there in the depth of the pit of all of that Yeshua revealed himself to me and took my hand to raise me out of that pit. And so I'm very clear on where that leads. If you don't have the Lord and the life and the breath of Yeshua, who breathes life in and gives you a hope and a purpose for your life. And it's in the midst of that journey that he calls us to the things we're called to.
And then you end up running around the world driving spikes into the ground.
I would suggest that's not everybody, but it certainly has been part of my assignment. That's for sure. Yes, it's just been kind of a whole wild thing. I didn't. He just told me to do it from this first spike that he provided as I was driving to Ottawa, right there, the exact place that he said it would be. And then stones are turning gold in my hands. That was all in that first assignment. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, you can't make this stuff up, obviously. And so it just sort of gave a confidence in walking in obedience to this thing.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. So you say you don't want to reveal exactly when, but you say this is happening soon.
Yep.
So of course, one of the things that we can be doing on this program here is to be praying for you and covering that,
right.
For safety and protection, and also discernment. You're going to need scouts. Right. I've often described, years ago, I was going through a series on the Psalms, and Psalm 144:1, one of my favorite verses in all the Psalms. Blessed be the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war, my fingers for battle. And I did this whole message on, different types of warriors. And I talked about the samurais, and I talked about the ninjas, and, I'm a big martial arts fan. So, and also the Knights Templar. Mm-hmm. And I say that, I'm kind of like, spiritually, I'm like the samurai. I'm kind of out at the front lines and all regalia and everything else. But there are other people that God surrounds me with who are ninjas, and they're in the dark, and they're hidden from the enemy. And so while, the attention spiritually may be focused on the one who's on the front line, the general, you need the scouts and the spies and everything else in the darkness to bring the intel. so that
Right.
you know which way to go. And I think you need a lot of that.
Yes. Well, and luckily we have been developing ongoing relationships with so many, and again, I mentioned Dr. Laura Sanger, and now having regular communication by email, but also on Zoom, and others, and again, you're right, you need those scouts. And so even to have people responding to our prayer strategy, and we receive things regularly that we lift up in prayer. For me, one of the things that's being so incredibly helpful is, a discernment, right? And so how do we describe discernment? For me, when I hear something, receive something, I immediately in my soul, but it's actually my spirit, of course, in my spirit, I either get a check of no, or when I get a real confirmation, there's just something that comes in that helps me to really discern. And so most of my life is guided by prophetic words, prophetic things that I've received that sort of have overarching as far as continuing to hear from the Lord, where those things then line up to those prophetic words as well. And so to me, I take the prophetic very seriously. There's not many that I would put in that category. There are a few that I do follow, or at least receive. And at times I'm just going, no, I don't see that. But again, all of us need a high level of discernment in these days, because the enemy is working full time. I always say about the enemy, he tries to hold you back. But once he can't hold you back anymore, he gets behind you and starts to push you, too far. Right. And so, in this,
or in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Or in the wrong direction. And in these days of the revealing of evil and all that's happening, we have to make sure that our discernment is high, because he wants to push us past things at times. And so our degree of understanding of revelation and discernment are key to keep us on the right path in these days of world events that are happening right now, so that we can keep ourselves clear and on task.
Well, and May is a big month, because we just the occult just celebrated Beltane a couple of days ago, and that with Halloween are the two highest occult days of the year. There's usually sacrifices that are involved in that, but we are also in the middle of the counting of the Omer.
Yes.
Now we always celebrate Shavuot on the Sunday, on the first day of the week.
Sure.
Because we calculate we believe first fruits always falls on Sunday, not the day after unleavened bread. And there's debate within the Jewish community on that. Sure. The Jewish community celebrates it after the day after first fruits, after the beginning of unleavened bread. Right. So, but whichever day you celebrate it. But so we're going to be celebrating Shavuot on the 24th, the first day of the week. Right. And
Pentecost Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. So, there's any time that you have one side working, the other side's always working. And so no matter which way you look at it, whenever the enemy is working, we always know that God is countering. Whenever God is working, we always know the enemy is countering. So what does that tell us? Number one, the battle is always on. There's never rest. And anybody who thinks that they can have a true Christian walk now and not be in war, you have no idea of the times. And I always remember the Queensryche song from back in the 80s, Sign of the Times.
Yes.
It was a powerfully prophetic song.
Right.
Even though, obviously they weren't believers or anything like that.
Yes.
But God does use secular bands in order to, proclaim and prophesy to us. Yep. But so, number one, the battle's always on. But number two, we always have to remember, and this is why what you're telling us that you're doing today is so encouraging. The victory has already been won.
Right.
The blood was shed 2,000 years ago, as you say, all over the land. And now what God is doing is he's using the power of that blood from 2,000 years ago to reclaim the land for himself. And you and I get to be part of that.
100%. If we choose.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Sadly, it's true for everybody who's who's had the breath of Yeshua breathed into them, new life and salvation. But most people are sadly oblivious to the reality we are at war. And if we don't understand that, we are just wasting our time. Now, again, everybody's assignment is different. So I'm not suggesting, but at least be aware of your assignment. At this time, we are not right now on a cruise ship. We are on a battleship. And if we don't understand our assignments on the battleship, which is a lot different than your assignments on a cruise ship, which is, ending up in the right eating hall at the right time. This is about understanding the assignments that are at hand, that we're tracking, aware of evil that is happening, receiving those assignments, and being active at war. And these are the times.
Amen. Well, we've come to the end of our hour once again, sadly, because you and I could go on. Well, we'll have to do this on a regular basis. Maybe I'll just have you join the show or something like that. So you'll be leaving soon, so we need to lift that up in prayer. Yes. And we are definitely going to schedule you back on after you return, because we're going to want to hear about all the sordid details.
Yes. You're never quite sure what's always going to happen. Again, it wasn't on my assignments. I wasn't necessarily ready for machine guns being pointed at me with, light red dots on you. It's a interesting reality. But, I had such confidence of walking in the things of the Lord at the time. I literally felt it would be impossible for them to kill me. It might sound crazy, but I always say to people, if you've got assignments from the Lord and you haven't completed those assignments yet, he will keep you. Yeah. In the palms of his hands, and be confident with what you are called to do.
All right. Well, Mike, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We pray the Lord's blessing and protection upon you as you head off and do his work. And we'll look forward to having you back soon. Want to thank everybody for joining us, and we bid you a Shavua Tov, a good week. Keep counting the Omer, because I believe on Shavuot this year, we're going to see some fantastic stuff, and what you're doing ties right into that. So once again, have a great week, everybody, and we'll look forward to seeing you right back here next week on lamnetwork.tv. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I won't run from the crushing. I'll hold on through the pain. What I lose means nothing.
If you missed today's show, or want to watch it again, or want to tell someone where they can watch this episode, go to lamnetwork.tv, where you can find this show and all the other live Lamb Show archives in the on-demand section of the website. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to tell someone about the Messianic Lamb Network.
I just wanna be your sanctuary, a dwelling place for grace and mercy. Keep sifting me till everything is on the threshing floor.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussions, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take a tour of the lamnetwork.tv website. I'm Darryl Weinberg, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.
let it fall on the threshing floor. Everything that's between